The Sam Houston Bearkats, after coming off of a huge comeback victory over the Texas State Bobcats in NRG Stadium, now march on towards El Paso to take on the UTEP Miners in the Sun Bowl in hopes that they avenge themselves from last year's heartbreaking loss, one of many heartbreaking losses from last year. But they're off to a good start, 4-1. Let's see if they can keep it up. Hello, everyone. Colin Neal, Luke Scott, right beside me here for Sam Houston Sports Talk Pod 22. This is Sam Houston versus UTEP preview. Before we get started, be sure you like and subscribe today. We got a lot of new faces, so glad to have you all with us here. 157 subs. Luke, we saw a lot of growth this weekend, that's for sure.
We did, and this whole past weekend's been very good to us, Colin. Of course, the game and kind of the way it played out, you just couldn't pick a better game to be a part of. Both of us being there at NRG, one up top, one down the sidelines, have gotten a lot of DMs, a lot of good feedback. Both of us have, right, from this past weekend. So, um, extremely fun, extremely blessed, but. We got another one coming up this Thursday.
Yep, like I said, UTEP Miners. Last year they were in Huntsville. They were down late, but then they came back led by Cade McConnell, who had a good game against the Sam Houston Bearkats. He will be the starting quarterback for the UTEP Miners. But Luke, kind of just reflecting on last year, 37-34 loss on a last second field goal from the Miners. I was up top in the Bowers Stadium press box. You were down in the stands. Just what do you remember from last year, and how? And honestly, I think it could play it out a lot more differently.
Yeah, last year was obviously last year. It was just one of those games that um, it felt like we were the better team and just couldn't win it. So, um, 3-point loss there, and it was kind of a spot where you know throughout the game we were in control, but we really just had that one bad quarter, which was, of course, it was in the fourth quarter, right? Gave up. I want to say it was like 17 or 14 points in the last quarter, and just kind of blew it. But um, this year's team is a lot different. This year's offense is a lot different than last year, and UTEP's team is a lot different than last year as well. So, um, it just kind of flipped around a little bit, but um, obviously a disappointing loss. But I think this year we're much improved.
Yeah, in that game, they gave up 17 points in the fourth quarter. Sam Houston got out at the end of the first half, was up 21-13, and then Utah just had a massive fourth quarter to, to get ahead of the Bearcats. But Utah lost their head coach. They got a new one, Scotty Walden. He is the second youngest FBS head coach. 34 years old, coming over from Austin P. Just we seen quite a lot. Luke, he at first at the beginning of the season, he didn't make a great first impression for the city of El Paso. Over 41,000 showed up against Southern Utah, especially after Southern Utah's head coach talked a lot of mess about El Paso, Juarez, and just dogging that area of the country a little bit. It seems like but at the end of the day, Luke, the Thunderbirds, I believe Southern Utah is called, marched into the Sun Bowl and defeated the Miners. But there seems to be a lot of promise. They're ranked very highly in the recruiting rankings. But I tweeted this out over the main account. Recruiting rankings don't matter if you can't develop. But in one side, it's not a good start. But in the other, for the future of UTEP, it is off to a good start according to some rankings.
Yeah, and of course now just with the recent news breaking,
Yep.
with UTEP moving now to the Mountain West, which I mean obviously the Mountain West isn't the Mountain West that we knew, even a month ago, right? So it's going to be a little bit different, but it's still a program that's trying to move in the right direction. Um, They have a coach that they really believe in. Worked at the FCS level. He had a brief stint, I believe, at Southern Miss. I want to say. I might be wrong there, Walden. But it's a program that's has been in a kind of a similar spot as Sam, and now they're moving up into the Mountain West, which um, is probably a little bit better of a conference than the Conference USA. But yet we still don't really know what they look like because of all these moving parts. So, um, similar in the spot and size. UTEP is a growing university, right? So obviously under the University of Texas system. Um, I don't know. It's different.
Yeah, the UTEP fired Dana Dimmel after his fifth losing season in 6 years. I mean, Walden coming into the season, he got the Governors up to number 10 in NCAA's FCS coaches poll, but lost to Chattanooga 24-21 in the first round of the FCS playoffs this past season. They are in the United Athletic Conference, which is I believe is like a it's still it is basically the WAC ASUN Challenge kind of partnership, but they kind of just molded. Yeah, just but Walden's now up in FBS. He brought over a lot of players from Austin P. So he brings familiarity to El Paso for himself to get settled in to this new level of football. But Luke, you and I were talking about this. Does that help? Does that necessarily really help Scotty Walden? Because I mean, making your roster a majority of FCS players from your previous school is a good idea in a sense. Again, familiarity wise, but do you think that he probably could have recruited a lot better in the offseason and probably hit the transfer portal a lot more in other areas?
Yeah, maybe. Coaches, bring a lot of their guys from their past schools because and coaches too, right? Because they understand the system, they understand the schedule, the way they go about things, schemes, all sorts of different underlaying kind of deals that you don't necessarily see, when you're watching the game. That's why you bring a lot of those people. Um, Now, when you want to talk about just the roster buildup, obviously they're going to have a lot of the FCS more quality guys, which and we know there's plenty of quality in the FCS, right? But
Yep.
um, at the FBS level, it does put you back, but it also puts you ahead with those guys that understand of kind of what the head coach wants to do and all sorts of things, kind of like that. So it's mixed. It goes both ways. And you talked about UTEP recruiting well. Um, in the rankings, of course, we know how well that worked for Texas State last week, right? So um, it helps and it doesn't help. They are what their record is. They're 0-4, but a lot of these games have been really close games, too. So just because they're 0-4 doesn't mean they're an awful team. They still uh, have had some pretty good moments. They could have beaten Liberty. They played Colorado State, who's actually a really good Mountain West team, right? Southern Utah was to overtime. I know it's Southern Utah, but still, right? And they've only had one home game. They've been on the road a lot, so being back at home is going to help them a lot. But when you talk about like bringing guys over, it goes both ways, Colin.
I was wondering what you would think about that. I kind of had that thought in my head. Of course, Sam Houston,
Yeah, but
being an FCS school for a long time and maintaining a lot of those same guys in their first year in FBS, and we all know how that went. But I mean, it kind of just works differently. It depends on the situation where you're going. But yeah,
it depends on so much. But like, look at when and I know we weren't moving up levels, but leaving or moving schools. When Keeler left Delaware, right, to Sam Houston, he brought offensive coordinator Ryan Carty, with him, right? He brought uh, Delaware players with him to Sam Houston. So it's those are the type of things that can help progress the rebuild a little bit, and to kind of hit the fast forward button. So you're not starting off way behind the eight ball. You got a little head start there, but yeah, I mean it. There's so many other factors that go into that type of thing. It's just an impossible answer I could give.
Sorry, I muted myself, but no, you're all good. I got you. I was just wondering what you thought. But by the way, if you haven't already, be sure you subscribe today to Sam Houston Sports Talk today. If you haven't already, Luke, we also just got off of the head coach Casey Keeler's press conference. He acknowledges that this has the makings of a trap game. Sam Houston, of course, has come off of a big victory over Texas State, 40-39. This was probably a matchup that the players and a lot of the fans had circled on their calendars. But you're not. The thing is, Luke, you're not even halfway through the season yet. This UTEP game is the halfway mark in the season, and then after that, you get a bye week, and you're also on a short week at this current time. What do you think the Bearcats are going to have to do in order to perform like they should against UTEP? Because a lot of outlets are predicting a blowout, but it but there's some murmurs that this could potentially be a much closer game than most think.
Yeah, and I'm also kind of one of those people that think um, this game is going to be a good one. It's going to be a low, not necessarily low scoring, but the differential is not going to be as much as a lot of people, believe. Um, it's when you talk about the trap spot, the trap game. This is the definition of a trap game. Who did UTEP play last week, Colin?
Nobody. They played
They're
again.
off the bye.
Well, it was actually something called bye week, but
Right.
it's the only team you don't have
Right.
to play.
Right. They're on the bye week. They're rested up. They're watching every single little thing you do. It's a whole another week of preparation for Sam Houston. Sam Houston, on the other hand, right, comes off a huge comeback victory last second against Texas State at NRG. It is, in the fashion that we did it, everyone's feeling themselves after the game, us included, and well deservedly. Um, a big victory, and everyone's talking about you in the state of Texas. Look at Sam Houston. Look at Sam Houston. Short week, away game at the Sun Bowl with UTEP coming off a bye. This is the prototypical trap game. My real thing is though, the line is weird because the line with a lot of these trap games, you'll see maybe that lower scoring line. It'll be like a Sam Houston in this case is favored. So Sam Houston would be favored by, a 6.5, 7, 7.5. It's not. It's 10.5, right? It's weird. If it was 7.5, 7, I'd be way more concerned. But with the line being that big, kind of tells you Vegas might know something too. Sam might not be susceptible, but we've also heard Coach Keeler talk about how this team is a player-run team. It's veteran. It's a lot of grown men on this team that have been in this program or other programs for a long time. Have played some high-level ball. They know what they have to do. So in that case, I'm not too concerned. But it is, like Keeler said, it's a total trap game. And if you're looking at this game from an outsider view, you're probably loving UTEP in this spot.
I do like that Keeler acknowledges that this is the literal makings of a trap game, but this
Totally. But
I,
Colin, if we get out of here with a win, next week's bye week, that's the perfect spot to have a bye week after that.
yeah, that's what I was getting at too, because then after that bye week, you are back home in Bowers on ESPN2, taking on Western Kentucky, who are looked at as either a first or second place in Conference USA, but more notably, they were predicted to compete with Liberty in the Conference USA championship game. and they lost to them in a heartbreaker last year as well, driving down the field in the final minutes of the game and just couldn't convert at the goal line once again, or not the goal line, but basically in a very good situation where you can score a touchdown to win the game. But we won't, of course, be talking about that game. That'll come in due time. But like you said, Luke, this is a perfect game. This is a perfect test for Sam Houston. Can they take care of business even after such a big win? Where in all circumstances it could seem like it'd be a pretty close game, but this is a good test, I think. I mean, not as big of a test as last week, that's for sure. But this is a test regardless.
I think mentally this is a bigger test than last week
Mentally,
because
okay, I like that.
last week you know what you're going up against. Texas State's a great team. You understand that. But this week, moving on to the next page, that's a huge obstacle. I mean, it just is. And in all sports, you see this spot, this hangover spot. Team has a huge win and comes out slow. If you get down early like we did against Texas State, you know, I'm not saying that we can't come from behind again because we can't. We just saw us. But that's a huge mental obstacle that we need to avoid really as much as possible. If you can get out in this game in a lead in the first quarter, a 14 nothing, 14-3, 17 nothing, like that type multi-touchdown game, I'd feel much better going into that second quarter and second half. I just don't want to fall behind early in this game. I just don't.
Do you see this as kind of also a way for the offense to open up the playbook a little bit more? Because the passing game was nearly non-existent against Texas State, and the same thing as the week before
It's
against
2
New
weeks.
Mexico State. Do you think this is a good spot for the Bearcats to open up that passing game along with the playbook?
It is, but I don't want to get away from what we're doing. I don't want to just disband the run and make Hunter Watson throw 40 times, 30 something times.
Yeah, no,
That's not who we are,
no.
Colin. That's not what I want to see. I still want to see balance. I still want us to see, uh, yeah. In previous weeks, we've ran the ball way more than we've passed the ball. I'd like to see a little bit more balance and see us open up that. Just because I know we have really good athletes outside,
Oh yeah,
and I think we match up really well against UTEP outside. I'm not saying we don't match up well against UTEP on the inside either. I think we do. Um, but I think if you can get like a legacy Adai game, you can get a couple deep strikes to him and really open this thing up, and also build some confidence with Watson throwing the ball. In front of the press, in front of whoever he talks to. He's not going to say that he's not confident. Or he's going to say he's confident throwing the ball, and I'm sure he is. But I'm sure there's somewhere also where he's looking at that stat line and saying, "Wow, I only threw for 90 yards this game, right? Or however much." He's better than that, and I think we'll see that against UTEP, not as good UTEP team. If you throw the ball, 15 to 20 times and you can get a couple touchdowns there, I'd take that game. The yardage, I don't really care. I want to stick to our game plan as much as possible. Now, if we're throwing the ball, Colin, 15, 20 times in the second quarter and we're in a dogfight, I'd be thinking, okay, what are we doing? Maybe let's get back to what we do is run the ball and play that tough man-on-man football, hat on hat, right? So
yeah,
I just want to see a little bit more balance.
yeah. Well, it's also a big game for the burner accounts, that's for sure.
Oh, it is. It is. Yeah. These the Texas State one, we were always kind of hyping it up, and we never really saw any beef up until the game week, and then it really exploded. UTEP, UTEP burners and the Sam Houston burners, the fan accounts have just been going nuts the entire season. So
It's
this will be a good
it's
one.
it's so awesome. I love it so much. Well, we're gonna step aside, and coming up next, me and Luke, talk more things about UTEP versus Sam Houston, more on the UTEP side of things, to learn more about this all new UTEP team with a brand new young head coach. Jon Teicher joins us next. He is the voice of Miner football and basketball. That interview comes your way right now here on Sam Houston Sports Talk. All right, everyone, welcome back to Sam Houston Sports Talk, the Sam Houston versus UTEP Miners preview podcast. Now joining us, he's entering his 44. He has entered rather his 44th season as the voice of UTEP football and men's basketball. The voice of the Miners, Jon Teicher. Jon, thank you for coming on and discussing this Thursday night's game. Last year, as you know, and of course, as you saw, the Miners were able to come back against Sam Houston in Bauer Stadium in Huntsville, Texas last year, win it 37-34. But this matchup feels pretty different this go around. The teams look, identity wise, different, with UTEP new head coach and Sam Houston with the resurgence, it seems like this year.
Well, what a job Casey Keeler has done shepherding the Bearcats into Conference USA. And what they've done is not an easy thing. I don't think fans really have any kind of a concept of how challenging and how difficult what the Bearcats have pulled off is. And for them to have been as competitive as they were last year and to have won 3 of their last 4 games, and now, of course, what they've done this season, capped by the incredible comeback against Texas State last week, says it all. The Bearcats are playing darn good football.
I believe someone's trying to call you.
We'll make sure they aren't able to get through.
No, you're all good, but go ahead, Luke.
Yeah, so UTEP has kind of come into this year, obviously 0-4, but a lot of these games have been pretty close. Just kind of talk to me of what's kind of been the story for the UTEP Miner football this year.
Yeah, they've surely been competitive. I mean, they opened at Nebraska in a situation that was pretty well impossible. I thought the Miners accorded themselves about as well as could have been expected there. They led most of the way against FCS Southern Utah in the second game of the year and probably should have closed that game out, didn't close that game out, and as a result, lost that one as well. And certainly they were in both games the last couple of weeks. They were down a touchdown late into the third quarter at Liberty against the Flames in their second to most recent game, and then were a touchdown down midway through the fourth quarter at Colorado State, and actually had a pick six that would have tied the game, nullified by an offside penalty. So UTEP was down in that game as well, and very much had a chance to come from behind and win that game. So the Miners have been competitive. They're going to have to very much be so against the Bearcats in that running game on Thursday.
Jon Teicher joining us here on Sam Houston Sports Talk. Jon, got a new head coach, and Scotty Walden, 34 years old, second youngest in FBS, comes over from Austin Peay. Just last year, he led the Governors to being number 10 on the FCS coaches poll. Heartbreaking first round loss though to Chattanooga, but still a really exciting young gun in the industry. It seems like. Just what can you say that he has brought to UTEP, and what have you seen so far out of him?
Well, Colin, I think basically it's been the 2 E's, enthusiasm and energy, that he's brought to this particular program, and it's been well received in this community. I think he was an ideal hire for UTEP. I think he's a template moving forward as to what UTEP coaching hires should look like. And I think Scotty's going to do, eventually, he's going to do good things here at UTEP. It's probably a lot to ask for that to happen in his very first season, but he's installed his culture, he's installed his system, and he does too many things, I think, extremely well and right at the tender age of 34 not to experience success. So in my mind, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when Scotty Walden is going to bring success for UTEP football.
Yeah, so obviously we're going to be having a different quarterback start, Cade McConnell, for UTEP. We saw him last year play against us. Just kind of explain the quarterback situation for UTEP and kind of what are the thoughts about him?
Well, first of all, that's a duel between Cade McConnell and Skylar Locklear, who started the first 4 games, came with Walden and his staff from Austin P, played very little there, but obviously understood the system quite well. The duel between he and McConnell uh, started in the spring, continued through the summer months, and right up until the final couple of days of fall camp before the opener at Nebraska. And McConnell started the final 6 games a year ago. He went 2-4 in those 6 games. So obviously, the advantage that he has over Skyler is that he's got a little more experience at this level, and certainly the trust of the players that remained in this program with the coaching change made during the offseason. And of course, Locklear's advantage was that he understood the system that Walden was bringing with him from Austin P. So I think that was certainly what was on the table uh, during the weeks and months leading up to the start of the season. Locklear was initially given the opportunity and certainly did not play poorly. I don't think that was the case at all, but I think that Coach Walden felt that after an 0-3 start at halftime of the Colorado State game, which the first half was not a good one for UTEP, that Miners just needed a spark, and he's continuing it into this week's game against the Bearkats.
What kind of system does Scotty Walden bring to El Paso?
Well, it's basically tempo. Miners are wide open. He sold the fact that he liked to run a play when things were going well every 12 seconds. So tempo is the Miners thing, and it can be very challenging for an opponent that doesn't play that way themselves to adjust to, having just 2 or 3 days of practice to get ready for a particular opponent. Now, if you play that way and obviously practice that way, it's a much easier adjustment, but it can be a challenge if you don't play and practice that way as well.
Yeah, it's kind of two different styles when it goes about clock management with these two teams. UTEP, like you said, wants to go quick, and Sam is more of that grind you out and really see that clock churn. Defensively for UTEP has struggled a little bit, um, stopping the run, stopping the pass. What are you seeing kind of UTEP's biggest challenge this year?
Well, I think stopping the run more so than stopping the pass has been a bit of a challenge this season. Actually, they've been fairly decent against the pass, but again, for the kids, and there were a few of them that did stick from the previous coaching regime, changing systems, changing the way things are done. There are some kids, again, on the defensive side of things that came along with Walden and his staff from Austin P, and they're trying to make the adjustment to playing week in and week out at the FCS as opposed to the FBS level. Um, there's been a lot of pressure on this UTEP defense because the lack of the ability of the Miners to be able to run the football themselves effectively. So they've probably been out there a little more often than they've hoped to be. And the Miners haven't scored a ton of points in their first 4 games, so there's been a lot of pressure on the defensive unit. But reasonably, I think they've given UTEP, certainly in the last 3 games, an opportunity, very late into the second half, to have an opportunity to win all 3 games.
Who is Cade McConnell going back to the offense side of the ball? Who is, or what, if more than one player applies here, who is Cade McConnell going to have to look to in order to be successful when it comes to driving the offense down the field?
Well, the Miners have an outstanding receiving core, much of it coming again with the present coaching staff from Austin P. Cam Thomas, very dangerous, a little, but very quick wide receiver. Kenny Odoms has scored 3 lengthy touchdowns receiving over the last 2 games, had 7 catches for 128 yards, 2 scores against Colorado State. So certainly those two. One guy the Miners would like to get going in the worst of ways is Javon Jackson, who a year ago rushed for 1,400 yards nearly at Austin P. He's off to a bit of a slow start, but I attribute much of that to a offensive line that has been virtually rebuilt in its entirety, having lost 3 guys to the NFL and 2 more to Power Five programs in the transfer portal. So that's been the biggest area of concern, I think, for UTEP in the season's first third, is that play on the offensive line of scrimmage. And certainly the Miners would hope to get their running game jump started against the Bearkats on Thursday.
Do you think with the bye week that y'all had this past week, do you think that can really help change the O-line here in that case? Because, I mean, we all know, the more an O-line plays together, the better they are as a unit. Do you think this bye week can change that?
Yeah, I do think so. Obviously the opportunity to get back to basics, and they've gotten a couple of guys that might have been a little bit banged up, including a kid that figured to be a starter at the beginning of the year, but was not well throughout much of preseason camp, is back in there, and he certainly should help. And they've made a couple of other changes. So yes, I think that the bye, or the opportunity week, as they call it, could be very beneficial to UTEP, and in particular, its offensive line.
Jon Teicher joining us on Sam Houston Sports Talk. Well, Jon, just a few hours before we did this interview, breaking news came out. UTEP Miners are now going to the Mountain West Conference. You and I were kind of talking about it a little bit before the interview, but what's it been like from y'all's perspective as y'all are now heading out more towards west to the Mountain West Conference?
Well, there's a tremendous amount of success for a lot of different reasons. First of all, the geographic fit. Everything with the exception of New Mexico State presently for UTEP in Conference USA is east of the city of El Paso. UTEP is the senior member of Conference USA in its 20th season, and every other school that was in the conference at the time UTEP joined 20 years ago has left the league. So, as you can imagine, there aren't a whole lot of long-standing rivalries for UTEP within the present configuration of Conference USA. In contrast, most of the schools presently that UTEP will be joining in the Mountain West Conference were with UTEP for the better part of 4 decades in the Western Athletic Conference before the split of that league into the WAC and the Mountain West, and then UTEP subsequently joining Conference USA in 2005. So there are some long-standing rivalries there. Again, for UTEP, it takes much of its competition into its own time zone, the Mountain Time Zone and the Pacific Time Zone, instead of into the Central and Eastern time zones, as had been the case in Conference USA. So there's a tremendous amount of excitement, particularly with longtime Miner fans, with UTEP in 2 years joining the Mountain West, which I believe is where they belong.
Yeah, it just makes more sense, and it's crazy how it shows how big Texas is. I mean, El Paso is kind of isolated out there. I have family out in Sierra Blanca, so I'm kind of familiar with the region out there. How much of a rivalry is it with New Mexico State? I mean, Las Cruces is only like an hour away, right?
Yeah, it's actually 35, 40 miles from here. So you can get to Las Cruces a lot quicker than that on a good day. But that rivalry dates back to the early 1900s. I mean, they've played most every year in football. They play not once, but and even did so before the Aggies joined Conference USA a year ago. They played twice per season in basketball, and it's just again, it's a rivalry separated by a few miles of interstate highway, a state line, and it is a fierce rivalry that goes back well over a century.
And is
Yeah.
there one with New Mexico as well?
Yeah, again, UTEP was with the Lobos in the Western Athletic Conference from the late '60s until the Lobos were part of the group that fractured off and went into the Mountain West in 1998. But even before that, the Miners and Lobos were together in the old Border Conference. and played games against one another long before that as well. So again, it is a rivalry that pretty much dates back more than a century.
Yeah, and but it's unfortunate though for New Mexico State, I mean, as much as I would, love for New Mexico State to still be in Conference USA, it would make much more sense on their part to go to the Mountain West because of how much closer, geographically speaking, the other teams would be, and also keep that rivalry with UTEP. But the problem is, it's their biggest rival that's in the way of that decision, and that's is the Lobos of New Mexico. Do you think though that New Mexico will you know tuck their tail in and allow their in-state rival to join the same conference as them?
Well, my thing is nothing is done until it's done, and the Mountain West still needs one more full member of its league to get to the minimum of eight to be considered a full football playoff participant in the NC2A at the FBS level. So there's still one school that's got to be added that is admitted as an all sports member. So until that other school is added, in my mind, I think New Mexico State still has a shot.
You think I kind of want to get back to the game at hand here, Sam Houston, New Mexico's, I'm sorry, and UTEP. How do you think the game here plays out on Thursday there at the Sun Bowl?
Luke, I don't know. I don't know. Obviously the Bearcats are coming off of just a tremendous effort in that comeback victory over Texas State at NRG Stadium on Saturday. I think the issue, and it's going to be interesting to see that the Bearcats are dealing with, is obviously they played on Saturday, and this game is on a Thursday, and they have to travel to El Paso, whereas UTEP will have been off the playing field for 12 days. So I think that's an obvious advantage for UTEP. Now, are the Miners capable of taking advantage of that fact? I don't know. And it's going to be interesting to see how the Bearcats come back to earth after the high of pulling off what they accomplished just last Saturday. So it's going to be interesting. Miners are going to have to do a better job slowing down the Bearcats' running game and getting themselves off the field defensively. If Sam Houston is able to run the football the way they want to, as you guys mentioned earlier, they're able to churn the clock and keep things at their tempo. I think it's going to be challenging for UTEP if the Miners can get to their tempo and, most importantly, score some points. Then I think certainly they can make things interesting.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting again, though. Last year, UTEP came to Bauer Stadium, good comeback win, winning at 34. But like we said at the beginning, it is going to be different this go around. John, you got any more final thoughts? Not just with this game, but how you think UTEP will play out the rest of its season?
Well, I think the Miners are going to get better and better and better. Again, when you're talking about a first year head coach trying to build a program and build a culture with a lot of new faces within, and with those that were here previously still trying to acclimate to all of the new systems and all that goes on with a new coaching staff. I think it's reasonable to expect that UTEP will continue to improve as the year goes along. How that's going to be reflected in the victory column, I don't know, but we've seen signs of improvement already. I think the Miners must become more proficient running the football themselves, certainly scoring points, which they've struggled to do consistently in the first few weeks of the season. That being said, they've managed to remain competitive even with their struggles in that regard. So I expect the Miners to continue to get better as the weeks pass.
You can follow Jon Teicher on Twitter at UTEP Miner Voice. You can also listen to him on the radio. It's on. Is it on just ESPN El Paso 600, or is it on other platforms that you would like to shout out?
Yeah, the UTEP Miners app, which you can download to your phone from the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. The UTEP Miners app allows you to follow UTEP football and men's basketball wherever you happen to be.
Yeah. Well, thank you, John. Thank you for coming on, and best of luck to both teams this Saturday. I mean, this
Colin, Luke,
Thursday.
yeah, Thursday. It's
It's weird.
tough to know. It's tough to know what day it is right now. That's for
Yeah.
sure. Colin, Luke, enjoyed visiting with you guys, and I think we're in for a heck of a game on Thursday night.
Yes, sir. Thank you. 44 years. Hey, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Congrats.
It's all been fun. It's all been good.
Coming up next, me and Luke Scott will wrap this preview pod up with our keys and predictions coming up right now. Thank you once again to Jon Teicher for joining us here on Sam Houston Sports Talk. We had to stop, but we had to kind of delay the last recording because Luke decided he wanted to record outside.
I did it. It's a beautiful day outside right
is.
now. The Astros are losing, which is a good thing for me.
Man, yeah, it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing for me, as you can see right here. So, but Luke, just kind of wanted to comment real quick before we get to our keys and predictions for this Thursday night's game for Sam Houston versus UTEP. Conference realignment is just on a whole nother level. It seems like this go around. But it seems like things are going to start settling down as the Mountain West and the Pac-12 get the amount of teams they need to get to be an FBS conference, because it seems like Sacramento State is now making a huge personal bid on their end to have the Pac-12 invite them, and if they accept Sac State's proposals or whatever, the Sacramento State committee that they're I forgot what committee they call it, but it's a committee that's leading the process and the effort to get
Yeah.
that school into the Pac-12. And also, if you said going to Mountain West still needs one more school, and New Mexico State is right there, and I feel like that is the move that they need to make because it makes much more sense, and it revives a lot of rivalries that Teicher got into with us a little bit during our interview segment with them. But Luke, hopefully it's starting to settle down now, and that way we don't have to keep talking about it.
Yeah, I don't think anyone really in the well, I know we're in the traditional media, but even like us, and kind of more the alternative stuff, I think everyone's pretty tired of talking about conference realignment. I mean, this thing has been going on forever. It feels like now the past. I mean, we would have to talk about it, on the 90.5 show. So, it's been an ongoing thing. Obviously, UTEP and maybe in New Mexico State here pretty soon. Those are pretty big losses for Conference USA. Obviously, UTEP being in the University of Texas system, but New Mexico State being, a very historic program, basketball-wise too. Not saying UTEP has actually won a national championship, right? Texas Western way back when made the movie Glory Road.
Great movie.
Yeah. But two big losses there, but I think it's probably better for those schools anyways. And, if you can get that UTEP, New Mexico, and New Mexico State kind of trifecta going, revive that a little bit, like we listened to in the last segment there. That'd be huge for those schools and programs. And it might be best for them. It's a tremendous loss for Conference USA, but, you might get more opportunity after that. So we'll see.
Let's now go ahead and dive straight into our keys and predictions once again for Sam Houston versus UTEP. As we all remember, and we mentioned it a couple times already last year, UTEP grabbed the win in Bauer Stadium. All time, UTEP is 3-0 against the Sam Houston Bearkats. The Bearkats have lost twice against UTEP at the Sun Bowl, a very historic site, a historic stadium for football. But Luke, it feels different this go around. But I want to hear your thoughts first. What are going to be your keys to the game for Sam Houston? And, you can go right ahead with your predictions.
Yeah, obviously, calling 4-1 starting off the year. And a large part of that's been due to our running game. Recently it's been Jay Ducker who's kind of taken over that RB1 role, that lead back guy. With the freshman DJ McKinney right behind him, doing a lot of good things on the ground. That's kind of been the edge where Sam Houston's had it since really the whole entire start of the year. We saw Texas State really struggle with that, so I think we have to keep running the ball well. Like I said earlier, I want to maintain balance, so I want to be able to see us throw the ball against a UTEP defense that's averaged and given up a lot of points. In recent games, they've given up over 25 points in a lot of their games, so they've been susceptible defensively and offensively. As like I said, or I'm sorry, and defensively, we got to keep playing Sam Houston ball up front. We've done a great job stuffing the run in the recent games. The back end has been the back end. Caleb Weaver, Jemerson, Armstead, Emon Allen, Fisher. I mean, you can just name them all. Isaiah Cash, they've all been great, right, for you so far. So it's just to maintain, kind of what you've been doing. I just really don't want to see us fall behind early again. If we fall behind early again, with the short week and coming off the huge comeback victory against Texas State, it might not be in the legs, just energy wise, and I'm a little nervous of that, especially of how quick Texas State can play. They're a tempo team. They're going to want to go fast. If you fall behind 2 scores, I don't know where that can go. So really, it's just get ahead early and play Sam Houston ball, work the clock. I think we have the coaching mismatch here. I think we have the better coach here with Casey Keeler. Old guy versus new guy. That's experience versus not as much experience, right? So I think we have to play Sam Houston ball, play our possession-based game, and see where that takes us, Colin.
What do you think the final score is going to be?
Final score. So obviously Sam has been is favored in this one, 10.5 points. I'm kind of thinking it's going to be right there with that. I think UTEP's going to cover this one. It's just such a tough spot to be if you're Sam Houston on the road to El Paso. It's in the state of Texas, but El Paso's way out there. I mean, it's in a different time zone, so the travel might be an issue there. I'm gonna say 30-20.
Okay, so you have UTEP getting to the 20-point mark. All right. I respect that. For me, you kind of already hit the points on the offense that I want to get to, but you're facing Cade McConnell. This is still this is like you said, a young head coach trying to get his offense in. Cade McConnell's making his first start this season. As Teicher talked about, it's been Skylar Locklear that has been the QB for UTEP and Scotty Walden. So I'm going to be looking at that pass rush once again, Luke. I think that trio, not trio, excuse me, the duo like on the ends, like I'm looking at Chris Murray, Javon Leon on one side. I'm looking at Nixon, DeJour, and Hayes on the other. DeJour has really been very impressive. I wouldn't be surprised if he's that first outside linebacker that goes out there. I think he's been performing really well. I think we're going to see him get a majority of the snaps. Obviously, it of course depends on the situation, whether they're second short, second and long, third short, third and long, wherever you are on the field, whatever. But I think that pass rush is going to be key to get pressure on Cade McConnell, because if you get I don't think, if I remember correctly, I don't think Cade McConnell is a mobile quarterback. I think he can be mobile, but he's more of a guy that wants to stay in the pocket and throw the ball. So if you collapse that pocket, make Cade McConnell have to use his legs, which disrupts a play for a lot of reasons. I think you'll be fine on the defensive side of things. And offensively, I do want to see the passing game get going a bit more. I would like to see Watson try to throw a bomb downfield to Ife, outrunning a corner, or Quavez a jump ball like we saw against Rice and Hawaii. So, but the running game will do its thing again, I believe. and also with that pass rush, the offensive line for UTEP is very new as well, as Teicher pointed out during our interview segment. So I am going to say Bearcats score more than 30 points again. I think they're gonna win by much more than the spread says. Because I do like the fact that Keeler is acknowledging that it is a trap game. I think the players would acknowledge that too if you ask them. I'm gonna say 32 to I'm gonna say 32-13. Kind of a 19-point win, a weird number on UTEP's side of things. It's gonna be tough because the Sun Bowl is a tough place to play at. No matter UTEP's history, they do play tough at home in front of the El Paso faithful.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting you bring up that point. Obviously Texas State O line and UTEP's O line very different, right? Just returning guys and whatnot. We didn't get much pressure on Texas State's quarterback McLeod. We just didn't get to him very much. We're gonna have to get pressure on UTEP, and I think if you can take away that first read, especially that UTEP. I mean, it's a quick offense. I mean, it's your first read and go type deal, high low reads. If you can take away that first option, and get after the quarterback, that was going to be huge. I think this is the game that the pass rush can really step up and be known and see the improvement that we've been kind of waiting for the past few weeks.
Yeah, and also look on the interior with Dylan Frazier, Quincy Wright, Jaden Phillips, and others. Seth Mason as well. I think that's a guy that you have to keep an eye on as well. The ULM transfer from last year. But that'll do it for us here for pod number 22. Man, a lot of pods already. Once again, want to thank y'all for the support. We've really grown a lot over the past week, 2 weeks rather. Especially ever since the football season started. We got our goal of getting to 100 subs before football season to be beginning. Our goal right now is to get to 200 before basketball season, and thanks to y'all, it seems like we are very much on pace to get to 200 before basketball season starts. Luke, the people have been very kind to us, and we're nothing but blessed.
They have, and it's we do it because we are those people that want the content and want to be able to hear people's opinions about Sam Houston, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything about it, right? And when we saw that, or you really saw that market there, and you said, "Hey, let's do it." And Colin, I just want to thank you for always having me on. But yes, the growth has been awesome. We want y'all to keep sharing us, liking, commenting, interact with us, on social media, in person, whatever. Never be hesitant to say something to us.
Yeah, absolutely. I cannot agree more. That'll do it for us. Like and subscribe today if you haven't already. This has been Sam Houston Sports Talk, Pod 22. Bearcats taking on the Miners this Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central Time on CBS Sports Network. It is primed to be probably it is one of the only two games that are going to be going on in FBS college football, so Sam Houston could be getting a lot of eyes on it this go around, especially after what they did against Texas State. So, but yep, follow us, subscribe today, and as always, eat 'em up cats, baby, with a K.
Eat 'em up, cats.